Well, good afternoon, guys. This is the last of our surviving COVID-19 vlogs, and I've got an absolute belter today. We've got Ben Wilson from Wilson Property. So today's discussion is going to be a bit of fun. Ben's come along. He's pretty relaxed, pretty cash, and keen to have a bit of a chat to us. So looking forward to getting into that. Now, just below, there's a red button. That's for subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Make sure you hit that because we've got this vlog and also some more coming up, a little less COVID focused. And indeed on Friday this week, we have an all-star panel from our vlogs that we've been doing over the last couple of months. So we'll have 5 or 6 of the top agents and top vlogs that we've had on. It's going to be a nice session chatting to those guys, just seeing how they've emerged over the last couple of months and seeing what strategies they've put in place. Also, you can load Spotify, the podcast on Spotify and also on iTunes. Just follow homely.com.au on those channels. But let's get underway now with Ben. Hey, Ben, thanks so much for giving us some time today.
You're welcome, mate. Thanks for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, Ben, let's get a bit of your story. I'd like to hear how you have done 23 years, and you told me that you came out of school and you were cutting out advertisements out of the age many, many years ago. That was one of your jobs, to now being having over 30% of the market share in an area where there's already 7 agencies, but you've got over 35% in your area. So, mate, tell us a little bit about the early days and a bit of your history.
Well, I guess I never really thought I'd end up working in the real estate industry. I did a bit of work experience as a 16-year-old with a property valuer, and that was a bit of interest to me. I managed to scrape through year 12. My grades weren't good enough to get into the property course at RMIT. I think I ended up getting about my 5th preference, which was a business degree at Monash University in Gippsland. That lasted about 2 months. I dropped out. I then went and worked with a guy building concrete water tanks. I soon discovered that manual labour wasn't for me. I then went and completed my agent's rep. Got that, did that via correspondence, and then I made the move to Melbourne. I ended up with a couple of mates leasing a house in Brunswick, and then I got a job as a rental listing agent for an agency in Elwood, and that wasn't ideal, sort of travelling, country boy, travelling from one side of the city to the other every day. But yeah, so my job entailed on a Wednesday and a Saturday going through the classified section of the Age, cutting out all the private for lease ads, and I rang every client, made some notes. If I was lucky enough to list one of those properties, I'd get paid a percentage of the letting fee, and it was a higher percentage again if we retained the management. But I soon discovered that the reason that people advertised in the classified section themselves and tried to find tenants was they didn't necessarily like dealing with real estate agents, and
or it had a bad experience, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to pay the fee. So it was a bit of a battle. I was getting paid a car allowance at the time. It was $125 a week. I was getting paid commission for every property that I was able to list and lease. And at the time, my rent, or my third share of the rent of the house that we leased in Brunswick was $300 a week. So my third of that was $100. So it was pretty tough going, but I think that's probably helped me get to where I am today.
You certainly learned tenacity in those times, no doubt. What sort of foundation did that provide? Where did you head to from there, obviously, as a leasing agent?
So I then got promoted within the business as a rental clerk, where all I did was basically type leases on the old-fashioned typewriter and collect rent. And at the time, I think the agency managed about 1,200 properties. All of the rents were adjusted to the 20th day of the month. Back in those days, there was no internet banking, there was no direct debit or anything like that. So everyone physically came in and paid rent either by cash or by cheque. So the 7 days leading up to the 20th and the 7 days after the 20th of the month was absolutely hectic. But again, it just, it teaches you a good work ethic, and we end up getting through it. I then got promoted to a assistant property manager with the same agency, all within the space of about a 14 or 15 month period.
Okay.
And as I said, I'm a sort of country boy at heart, and I soon discovered that living in Melbourne wasn't for me. So I went back and I've got a job working as a property manager in Morwell. That lasted about 2.5 years, and then we decided to open our own business.
So Morwell's obviously a lot closer to home than Elwood.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, and then you open your own business. So what year did you open the business?
We opened 23 years ago, so 1997.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right. And also always called Wilson Property Group, or is this a different iteration now?
At the time, I wasn't a licensed estate agent, and I went into partnership for parents. So we were originally called Rob Wilson Real Estate, and then we rebranded, and then my wife and I bought out my father, who still works for me. We bought him out about 6 years ago. But yeah, we've rebranded to Wilson Property over the journey.
Okay, so it's Wilson Property RCI. So you do residential, commercial, and industrial. So you cover a fair few facets there. So your role, are you sort of more residential, or do you focus on the commercial side of things?
Now, about 3 years ago, I stepped away from residential. I'm still heavily involved in our residential sales department. We have a sales meeting, as most agents would, on a Wednesday morning, which I run. I still get a lot of clients who contact me about buying, appraising and listing residential property, but I now focus on commercial and industrial, but I hand all those leads to my guys, because I saw there was a real opportunity in commercial and industrial, but also I had enormous belief in my 3 sales guys who are incredibly good agents, and they handle those inquiries and get the benefit of listing the property and selling the property and building those relationships with clients that I would have historically dealt with.
Awesome. Talk about a bit about your marketplace. A lot of the guys that we've spoken to over the last couple of months operate in marketplaces where, median prices might be anywhere from, 500 to 1.5 or even 2 million in some of the areas. What's the median price in your market there?
Median house price in Traralgon's 320,000. Probably 14 or 15 months ago, it was as low as 280,000, but we've seen some fairly good price growth in our region over that period of time.
It's interesting. I think you can learn so much from any range, whether you're selling $2 million properties or $3 million properties. You might have a larger volume, or the other guys might have a completely different marketing strategy, but everyone's got different things which they can certainly contribute. With obviously a median price, which is very different to that. Obviously, you probably run a volume business, and when you look at 30% plus market share in your marketplace, and you're one of 7 agencies in a town of, what's the population at the moment?
Population in Traralgon would probably be anywhere between 25 and 30,000 people.
So that's an extraordinary statistic to think that you're handling over a third of the transactions out of one agency when you've got 6 competing agencies.
Yeah, it is. We, as I mentioned before, the 3 sales agents that I have working for me, they're all quite different. I mentioned my old man still works for me. I've got another young guy who's got a different clientele that sort of tend to be drawn to him, and another agent who's pretty well known around the town that knows a lot of people that anytime there's something to be done in property, they'll contact him. So it's a bit of a diverse mix of agents, and we have had many more agents dealing or working for us in the past. We've had 4 or 5, even up to 5 sales agents, but I've probably changed tack a little bit over the last couple of years in that sometimes having an underperforming agent can affect the rest of the team. So we made the decision to put more resources into the support that our really good agents have, so they can just purely focus on listing and selling, and they've got sales personal assistants and additional sales support to help them get the properties listed and sold.
All right. Just a bit of a chat about your team there, because you mentioned to me just off screen there before that a lot of your staff are now sort of multifaceted. And one thing that you've sort of that probably aided through these last couple of months pre-virus was the fact that you'd structured your business that in such a way that a lot of your staff are able to do, multi-roles. So if you've got people who are away, especially I suppose in the administration side, or does that carry over into your property management and sales as well?
Yeah, so I guess that's been a real focus of ours over the last couple of years, having multiple staff that know multiple roles within the business. We always tried to promote from within. So quite a lot of our existing team started in rental reception or sales reception, and they've been promoted up through the ranks to assistant property manager or sales PA. So we have that sort of natural progression through the business. Marie Whitty, who's my business manager, she has assisted us to get to a point where, as you say, multiple people know multiple roles in the office. And I remember 5 years ago, we couldn't have a business manager go on leave for any more than a week because we have fortnightly pays and super and bills and everything to be paid. But we've now got such a good structure in place that Marie could actually go on leave for an extended period of time and not come back to a heap of work or everything kept right up to date. And a lot of that was, we were fortunate that we had that in place. During COVID, we've had, and I think the Premier has said that if you can work from home, you still got to work from home. This is probably why I'm looking like I am today. But we've had property managers working remotely, sales people working remotely. I've been working from home quite a bit, and being able to have people work remotely. Most of our programs are in the cloud, so everyone's got full access to it from their home. And we've had sales PAs who can step back and cover the reception whilst we've got staff away. So it just works really well.
I'd imagine that would help with the culture of the business too. When people are entrusted with multi-roles or more than one role or responsibility inside of their job, there's an interest in what's happening in the other side of the business, isn't there? And you've actually empowered and probably given a lot more trust to those staff.
100%. And I guess even going back to when I first started in real estate, working as a rental clerk, listing agent, rental clerk, assistant property manager, I know how stressful property management can be. People who have grown within the business that may have started on front reception, worked their way up into property management or a sales PA role, have that respect of how much is involved in a reception role or how much is involved with an assistant property management role. And you're right, it does certainly help with the culture of the business because everyone's got an understanding of how important every single role within the business is, and they respect their colleagues as a result of it.
Yeah. Ben, I want to touch on some of the things that mightn't affect some of the inner city businesses. When we think about some of the blogs that we've done, we've spoken, as I say, to a lot of guys who are operating in be it Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, whatever. Some of these businesses are very probably resilient in a way. I suppose they are not recession proof, but when you're so close to the city, there's always major employers. There's so much industry that's going to support it. When you're in a rural area like you are in Turalgan, you have to overcome some pretty big adversity when major employers pull out of the area. And I know that a couple of years ago when the Hayswood power station closed down, that would have been a fairly major blow to the local economy and probably driven out investors and probably a lot of people lost their jobs. Mate, can you give us a bit of a snapshot of that? I'm not sure how many people the Hayswood power station would have employed, but what sort of effect did that have on the economy and your property market, and maybe some things that you did to counter that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So Hayswood closed approximately or just over 3 years ago. And even in that 12 or 18 month period leading up to Hayswood's closure, there was a lot of uncertainty in our economy. Hayswood, I think at a guess, employed about 1,000 people. In that time, we also had a major timber mill closed down.
Wow. So
unemployment in the valley was pretty high. We ended up...
You know what the unemployment rate was?
I don't know at the time, but it would have been probably up around or close to 10%.
Wow.
So there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding Hayswood and the timber mill closing. When Hayswood finally announced that it was going to close, it was actually quite incredible. It actually felt like that it meant that everyone could draw a line in the sand and move on. And at that point, our market started to improve, but there was some pretty significant damage that was done through the media about the closure of Hayswood and the closure of the timber mill. And
So that was a long drawn out process. So when you say you're able to sort of draw a line on the sand, it obviously that had been closing for a long time, or there had been talk around that?
yeah, correct. There had been a lot of discussion and talk about the power station closing. So what ended up happening, there was a lot of negativity in the media. There was, as I said, but once they actually announced that it was closing, everyone sort of knew what was happening. We could draw a line in the sand and moved on. But the biggest challenge that we faced was trying to attract investors into our market, into our residential market. And at the time that Hayswood closed, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a strong buyer's market, 10 being a strong seller's market, our marketplace would have been probably a 1. And over the last 3 years, it's improved out of sight. It's probably up around a 9 at the moment. One of the things that one of our initiatives that we put in place was we created an information brochure that basically outlines the amount of investment that's been committed to in the Latrobe Valley. And the second edition of that brochure that we've just released, I think the number is up around $1.4 billion worth of investment. So every time we have a client that inquires about property in the valley or investment in the valley, they get an electronic copy of that brochure. What it doesn't include, there's been a recent announcement that the Latrobe Regional Hospital, there's been another $200 million committed to for a further extension of the hospital, which will be huge.
But that's that document that you prepared, you emailed that through to me, and I had a good look through that. That's an extensive piece of work that you guys put together. That's you would assume that the council or someone would have done that, something along those lines for you in order to drive back, I suppose, tourists and investors, etc. But you guys, off your own bat, you put that together. How's that been accepted?
It's been incredibly well received. It certainly helped knock any negativity about the valley on the head. We've got several other things that are very positive about our region. Our vacancy rate for residential rentals is currently sitting at about 0.6% within our office. We touched on before, the median house price is $320,000. A lot of those projects that we have listed in that brochure haven't been completed yet, so the ongoing jobs and the impact on the economy hasn't been fully felt yet. Obviously, there's been construction jobs. But also, we're starting to find a lot of people are looking for that sort of sea change or that lifestyle change and looking to move to regional areas. And it may be a coincidence as a result of COVID, but even leading up to it, we had a lot of buyers looking at sort of relocating out of that eastern growth corridor that could sell their $700,000 or $800,000 property, relocate to the Latrobe Valley or even one of the outlying smaller communities, buy an equally good as property as good as what they had down the line and put some money in the bank. And so that sort of was happening prior to COVID, but it's something that's I believe we're going to see more and more of.
Yeah. You said that you would probably scaled it on a number 1 being pretty horrendous at the time when the power station closed down, and now it's sort of looking at a 9. What sort of days on market were you experiencing at that point?
Our days on market back then would have been up around 120, 130, something like that.
Yeah, wow.
We're seeing more and more off-market sales. We're finding that something that's working really well for the guys at the moment. They'll list a property for sale. We'll upload the property to our website before it goes out to the other internet sites, and it goes straight out to our database. And we're finding that quite a large number of those buyers are purchasing before it officially hits the market.
Wow. Okay. Which was in stark contrast to 2017 and probably 2018, no doubt.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, right. How do you maintain morale in a time like that when your average days in market are blown out 4 or 5 months, and a major employer's pulled out? How do you keep your staff going?
Well, we're always very big on building our culture within our business. We understand that when you have a team of 16 people, everyone comes from different backgrounds and has different interests and things like that. My wife Sheree and I have always been very big on building our team culture. whether it be going, taking the team and shouting them to Sydney for real estate awards there, or Melbourne for the REIV awards or whatever. Putting on staff lunches. Our business manager, every time someone in the office has a birthday, she makes them a cake, just little things like that. But it's only a little thing that the guys love it. It really does help build the culture, gets everyone sort of invested in the business and wanting to see it succeed.
Culture's everything. Mate, can we have a look at those numbers that you shared just a couple of minutes ago before we got underway there? I was really interested to see the numbers that you shared for the 4 weeks pre-COVID and also in comparison, the last 4 weeks. Can you just shed a little bit of light on that? Because what we're seeing, there's an interesting trend there. I mean, a lot of the country is talking about a lack of stock on the market at the moment, but you guys seem to be experiencing bumper results and bumper levels.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 4 weeks leading up to the coronavirus, we listed 10 properties for sale, 10 residential properties. We conducted 34 appraisals. And in that 4 week period, we had 175 new buyer inquiries over that 4 weeks. In the last 4 weeks, and we measure this every Wednesday morning in our sales meeting, all the guys declare the appraisals, their listings, their new buyer inquiries. So it's only inquiries that have been new for that week. But in the last 4 weeks, as of this morning, 21 new listings, 45 appraisals, and 219 new buyer inquiries. And remembering that's on the back of having conducted no open days since the virus has hit.
That's an extraordinary increase. What do you put that down to, Ben?
I think probably some of it's investors looking at the valley now, knowing that they can buy an affordable property. There's incredibly good job prospects in the region. Could be people looking to relocate for employment with some of these major projects when they do come to, or when they are completed. We have had we've been fortunate that we've got a couple of really good subdivisions. So with the first homeowners grant and the builders grant, obviously some inquiry on retail residential allotments has picked up. But it could also be that, during COVID, that first sort of 3 or 4 weeks when everything just sort of seemed to stop and everyone went into a state of panic, that some of those people that weren't actively looking during that time have now sort of come back into the market as well.
Do you think there's a sense of, as you were saying before, maybe sort of tapping into that equity? You sell your $800,000 or $900,000 place, you might have a couple $100,000 mortgage on it. You go buy something in the Latrobe Valley for $320,000, throw some money in the bank, and sort of, has COVID made people think a little bit along those lines? Are you seeing some of that?
That's probably a bit hard to gauge, but one thing that we have thought that we will see moving forward is, as a result of COVID, people now realise that they can work remotely. They can have catch-ups like you and I are now with Zoom meetings and FaceTime meetings and that type of thing. So anyone who's lived in the city in a densely populated area might now realise that they don't have to travel into their office in Collins Street 5 days a week or whatever it might be. They could potentially look to relocate to a regional area, work remotely and only commute 1 or 2 days a week, and as we said, sell their more expensive property down the line, come and buy something in our region or in a regional area, and put some money in the bank.
Cool. All right, Ben, I'm going to tidy this up with a bit of a challenge to you. I'm going to ask you to put your residential sales hat back on and your investment thoughts around this. These vlogs go to a lot of people all around Australia. You're telling me that the Latrobe Valley is one of the best places that you can invest in at the moment. You're now pitching at a 9. The market's good. There's great opportunities everywhere. Give me the top 3 reasons that some of our viewers might consider an investment in the Latrobe Valley.
I guess number 1 would be the vacancy rate that we've currently got in our residential rental department, which is sub 1%. I think the first 3 months of this year it was 0%. We didn't have a single property available, and or vacant and available to be leased. So I often jokingly say that if my wife kicked me out, I wouldn't be able to rent anything for our office because we didn't have anything.
Okay.
That'd be number one. I think the housing affordability in our region, median house price of 320,000, would certainly be number two. Number three would probably be the employment prospects in our region. As we touched on before, there's $1.6 billion worth of investment that's been committed to in our region, but we haven't fully felt the effect of the employment opportunities that investment has created. So there's going to be some really good job prospects in our area. And yeah, I think if it was me looking to invest in Traralgon at the moment, it would certainly be looking to buy a block of land and build a 4-bedroom house, 2 living, 2 bath, double garage. Because it's you're going to get a very good return, but also there's some immediate upside. So the cost of the build to what the property is worth when it's finished is probably a $50,000 or $60,000 gain just in that, for anyone who's looking for an investment opportunity.
Nice one. Nicely tied up. All right. Now, if people are looking for an investment, in all seriousness, you've got that document you can share. And good day. Hey, Ben, thanks so much for giving us a bit of time today, mate. Really good to get a bit of insight into your market, into your journey, and to some of the challenges that you've overcome and seen the opportunity through those times of adversity. So, mate, thank you so much. And we look forward to maybe catching up in a couple of months' time again and see how it's progressing.
Thanks very much for your time, David.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ben.